Well, I had trouble whittling my huge pile of faves and raves down just to these few. There have been some marvellous books out this year. One of my favourites is Sarah Waters' new novel, The Paying Guests. She is brilliant at characterisation and at creating time and place. This is London in 1922, so after World War I, and Frances and her mother are having to cope with the fact they're very poor. Frances's brothers, so the mother's sons, have been killed in World War I, and their father has subsequently died and left them in debt. They have no choice but to take in boarders, and of course boarders is not a very nice title, so they call them the paying guests. And what then happens is filled with enormous tension. It has quite a slow beginning as the tension builds up, and it is totally unputdownable. The wonderful Sarah Waters at her best again. And Ali Smith, How to Be Both. This was a novel that was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize this year. I thought it might win it. It didn't, in fact, but it was totally brilliant and most unusual. It's published in two different, the same book, but in two different structures, if you like, because there are two stories, a modern-day young girl and a Renaissance artist. And you can either read the artist's story first or the girl's story first. They interlink in all sorts of intriguing ways, and it depends which edition of the book you pick up. Some editions start with the girl's story, some editions start with the author's story, and it makes no difference really which order you read them in. Very playful, very inventive. The young girl's mother has died, and she was a lover of paintings by a particular Renaissance artist that the girl then begins to investigate, and the artist, meanwhile, is watching this girl look at her paintings, and the two stories get tangled up. Absolutely fascinating, most unusual, and I highly recommend it. Quite a sophisticated read, but brilliant. The winner of the Booker Prize was Richard Flanagan, with this wonderful novel, The Narrow Road to the Deep North. Quite a grueling read in some ways, but very profound and thought-provoking. It's about Richard Flanagan's father was one of the Australians who survived as a prisoner of war, the building of the Thai-Burma railway. It's a story of human cruelty, but it's also a story of nobility as well, and the extraordinary ways that humans will behave under the most ghastly situations. Also a story really of personal cruelty and of what people do to each other in their personal lives as well. And another novel by a man, the wonderful Ian McEwan. This is Ian McEwan at his best. The Children Act has an experienced and mature woman High Court judge. She's a family court judge. You learn a lot about the cases that she judges. She's a highly respected woman, and the main case she deals with in this novel is the case of a beautiful 17-year-old boy who is going to die of leukemia unless she and the court order his parents, who are Jehovah's Witnesses, to allow him to be given blood transfusions. It's a difficult situation. It's beautifully written. There's a marvellous scene in it where the judge, a woman who's nearly 60, visits this boy in hospital, and he plays his violin and she sings to him, and it's just wonderful. And a New Zealand novel, I think for me the best New Zealand novel of the year, Tina Makariti, Where the Rikohu Bone Sings. Rikohu is the Chatham Islands. It's a story set, well, there are two stories really, set 100 years apart. Mary and Araya in the 1890s, and then Lulu and Biggs, twins born in the 1980s. And it's a story of being Maori and Moriori and coming to terms with who you are, your background and your identity, and it's a very, very important New Zealand novel. Lastly, just three for young people, Singing Home the Whale by Mandy Haga. Wonderful, wonderful teenage novel. The essence of it is a teenage boy who sings opera. He has this wonderful voice. He discovers a baby orca. Its mother has been killed, it's been separated from its pod, and when he sings opera, the orca responds to him and actually harmonizes with him. It's an absolutely inspiring novel. I loved it, and teenagers will love it. For younger ones, between the age of about 9 and 13, there's a new Ruby Redfoot. It's always exciting when a new Ruby Redfoot book comes out. This is Ruby Redfoot, Feel the Fear. It's by Lauren Child. Ruby Redfoot is brilliant at maths. She's also brilliant at code cracking. She has wonderful adventures, and you cheer for Ruby. She's a brilliant role model for girls between the ages of about 9 and 13. And last but not least, for younger children, this beautiful treasury of New Zealand poems for children, edited by the wonderful poet Paula Green. There's a whole range of gorgeous poems, illustrated all the way through. It is a total joy for any child from, I would think, 3 upwards, any child who loves language. This gorgeous, gorgeous book. I think I'm going to give one to my grandson. I think it's a gorgeous book for grandparents to give to their grandchildren, but for anyone, I mean, adults will love it as well. The Treasury of New Zealand Poems for Children. They're joyous.